I am curious. So this is a question for you to answer at the end of this. What are you noticing while you're doing this program? What's surprising you? It might be things that you weren't actually expecting. So I'd love to hear from you because I don't think this course is just about learning some massage. I think it has a lot more to do with self-care. So I would really like to hear from you and find out what the benefits are for you, and the benefits of the actual massage. So how your legs feeling too. Okay, so that would be lovely. So today we are going deeper, and that means that, what does going deeper mean? We're already going a little bit deeper. You found that out yesterday when we went into the petrissage movements, and you felt those more acutely. Well, now what we're going to do, and I have a few props here for you. So far we've been using fairly flat hands. So if you imagine that is your weight in the palm of your hand, even if you vary it, is going to be like a platform shoe or like a trainer, okay? Fairly evenly distributed. When we start to go deeper, what we do is we focus that a little bit more. So we might be using something like your thumb, your fingers. Advanced therapists will use their elbow if they're taught to do that. So now, if you imagine, the weight is transferred into a much smaller area. So it's much more intense. And for that reason, we have to be that much more careful. Whenever we go deeper, we go slower. We don't rush going deeper. Some people would say that you need to warm the area up before you start. That's kind of debatable because it rather depends on how you approach going deeper. But if you think of it like a sprinter, if a sprinter was about to do a 100-meter dash, they would want to warm up their muscles first. So in massage, we generally like to warm the area up first. There are exceptions for that. So I work with myofascial release, and that's a whole different way of working with the body. But we sink in very, very slowly. So there's no shocks to the body. So what we don't want is any kind of shock to the system. So if we're going deeper with massage, we tend to do that much more slowly. With awareness, we want to be really clear with ourselves, because we're working on ourselves today. But if you're working with somebody else, you need to be really clear about how tender that is. How much discomfort is there? As a general rule, you don't want anything to feel more uncomfortable than, say, 7 out of 10. 10 being really uncomfortable, you want somebody to stop. And why is that? Well, the reason is, if you are in pain, you can't really soften and release and relax those muscles. So all the muscles will do is go into a kind of guarding state, and you really lose any advantage that you may gain. So it really doesn't help to cause yourself pain. It shouldn't be more than 7 out of 10. So let's go with those kind of figures. I would say maybe 6. And the same with any of the massage we do here. Certainly don't want anybody feeling any kind of sharp pain around any of the areas we're going to work on today. I think the guide is you need to be able to soften into the discomfort. I wouldn't even call it pain. So if it's a little uncomfortable, and some people noticed that yesterday when we were doing the petrissage, and certainly I did, it was a little uncomfortable, but afterwards it felt great. So massage should feel good. Sometimes we have a little bit of a reaction if we've gone a little bit deeper, and that area where you've been might feel a little tender to touch after you've finished, and that might be the next day. It's a bit like doing exercise. So if you've done exercise, you might ache a bit the next day or the day after that. Massage can have the same effect. it's very unlikely with the kind of work that we're doing here, with what I'm teaching you. But if you do begin to work with other people, then just be aware that it's much better. Less is more. And if I'm working with clients, I'll always under-treat on a first session to see how they're going to react to that. Drinking water is important to hydrate, okay? So, you know, it's really useful. So after a massage, you usually feel thirsty. So go with that sense and drink more water. Okay, so we're going deeper today, and I wanted to show you what that means with the sponge before I get my legs out. So what we've done is we've skimmed the surface with the effleurage movements. We've gone a little bit deeper with the effleurage by using one hand on top of the other. And we've done the pulling and the wringing, but what we've really gone into with the petrissage movements is that picking up, twisting, squeezing, moving the tissues against themselves. That was the petrissage. What we're doing today is going into what we call compression techniques. So there are various ways we could do that. So we could use the heel of our hands, and we've done a little bit of that, but we would be more static with that, or much slower. So we would add pressure. I would normally be aligning my whole body. So I'll kind of show you what this would look like if I'm working. I actually lean into that and lean into the heel of my hand. I hope you can see that there. Okay. And we might even go that slowly because I can feel the sponge is giving, and that's how somebody's body would be. Okay. So that would be the heel of the hand. We could use the knuckles. So there's various knuckles you can use, but what you want to do is have everything aligned if you're going to use knuckles. So you want your whole body to be more aligned with that. Can you see there's no joints that have got awkward angles? So if I was like this, can you see I would actually be causing myself some damage there? You'll see a lot of massage therapists, if they haven't been trained well, using techniques like this. And again, you can see that the angle here is likely to cause damage in the wrist. I don't want to see any of that from anyone I help to learn massage. So always nice straight angles if you're using. If I was using those knuckles, again, straight angles. And the same, we're going to use reinforced fingers. So the fingers are going to be placed down. The other fingers can be placed on top, and then you're going to press into the tissues like that. And the reinforced thumb would be, the thumb would be on an area that's a little bit tender. The other hand goes on top of that. So I'm going to show you what that looks like underneath. So it looks like that. Now you've got some images in your group to show you how that looks. And the pressure would come from the hand on top. So there are some videos as well. So the pressure for that technique is from this hand. This thumb is just becoming now a tool. And remember, you don't take the thumb far away from the fingers. So there is how it would look. If I try and show you without covering that up, can I do that? Yeah, that's what would be underneath. And there's my hand on top. And the hands are soft. The hands are placed softly. And you'll see that I'm leaning my whole body into that. So if I were to use just my shoulders, I'm trying to keep my head in as well, but it's not really working. If I was to use just my arms and shoulders, let me show you what that would look like. Okay, that's a no-no. So watch how it looks when I use my whole body. And what you can't see is I'm in a slight lunge position while I do that. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to use our digits. We're going to use thumb fingers. We'll recap very briefly some of the stuff we've done before, and then we'll go into these lovely compression movements techniques where we find something that's a little bit tender. It's useful to use that technique if you find anything that's a little bit tender. And we're going to take our time with that. So that whole breath in, out, if something's tender, it's good to do that for yourself, and also to encourage anybody you're massaging, if you're using these techniques on anyone else, encourage them to use their breath as well. So if something feels a little bit tender, take a breath, and then you might press when they're breathing out and go with that slowly. So there's no shock to their systems. So let's start with a hold. So we're going to bring our hands down gently. By now you are noticing, I think, probably a little bit more. And then we're going to add the oil. These pump dispensers are really useful, and you know, save them from anything else that you have. All right. Spread the oil away from your leg. That way, if you drip it, it doesn't, again, it's not a shock. Start somewhere. I don't mind where you start. Maybe you start down here today. Coming down slowly to connect, whole hand in contact. And we're going to use that effleurage stroke to spread the oil. Whole hand in contact, whole hand really molding around the leg. If it was somebody's back, you'd have more areas to mold into. Okay. And as I said before, if you need to stop and add some more oil, then you come off nice and slowly. You finish that stroke, you add the oil, you come back just as slowly. And then it feels continuous. Some massage schools will teach people to actually try and keep a hand in contact with their client. I don't teach that, because if you actually conclude and come off gently, there's no sense of disconnecting. There's no sense of losing that continuity. So we'll go on then to whatever you really feel like doing. I think I'm going to do some of that nice drainage stroke up, coming up into the thigh, maybe circling. You can make other shapes as well. You could do a figure of 8. Maybe I'll do the figure of 8 inside and outside. Oh, look, I have a gnat bite. All right. So lots of that and you can begin to feel, I think, you feel the areas begin to warm up, which is what we're aiming for. We're just really stimulating those tissues before we begin to go a bit deeper. So this was the ringing stroke we did, ringing. Remember, both hands are working together in a push-pull action. And if you keep the whole hand in contact, but really allow yourself to pull through, you'll feel the benefit of that. And then we did some petrissage. Now I can see I have 2 gnat bites. Petrissage movements, picking up, squeezing, rolling. So we did the rolling technique. Obviously, you can do the inside of your leg too. It's just I can't show you from there. And this amazing kneading, keeping the thumb aligned with the fingers, not too much. I did a little bit of there. It's okay, but you don't want to do too much of that, okay? And if you begin to feel that your thumbs are aching or your fingers are aching, please be more careful and maybe avoid those things that are making you, that are giving you any difficulties. I'm just noticing as I come up here, and this is the thing about anything you're doing, you're feeling at the same time. Not only is your leg, your muscles, your skin here is sensing what's happening, but you're also able to feel with your fingertips are the most sensitive. So using your fingertips. So as I'm coming along here, I'm noticing, let me see if I can show you that. No, not really. There. Maybe you can see that. I'm noticing I go over a little ridge there because it's a little bit tight in there. So what I've automatically done is go into that fingertip pressure. So I've got quite a tender area here. And what I'm going to do now, so if you find a nice tender area, then we can do that together. I'm going to take a breath, and as I breathe out, I'm going to press in there just a little bit more. And then at the same time that I'm pressing in there, what I want to be doing is softening my tissues around that. Now, what I notice is my leg wants to relax a little bit more because, having this up so you can see means that that's keeping it a little bit tight. So, and as I relaxed into that, it's really interesting because as I'm relaxing my leg, that tenderness is just beginning to ease, and that should be the same for you too. And again, lots of people talk about how long it takes for things to ease. I've been a massage therapist for 30 years now and teaching for 25. And the longer I've been doing it, the longer I've decided, I decide that actually I go with how it feels to me and how it feels to my clients. So, and because you're working on your own leg, you'll be able to sense when your tissues, they literally start to melt under your fingers. And if they haven't started to melt yet, that's because you haven't been there long enough. So in your own time, spend longer until you literally feel that sort of melting under your fingertips. So, and remember that you need to soften in the whole area. So if you're tight in your leg because you're holding it up or something like that, see if you can let it go maybe on a cushion or something so you can really relax into that technique. So that is your reinforced finger compression. So I've stayed in one place with the finger. Let's see now if we can go into the thumb. I'm going to find an area around my knee. Now, it shouldn't be too difficult around my knee. And when we're going around joints, you want to just allow yourself to feel in, and you will feel the bones. Sometimes the muscles and the tendons feel more like bones, but you should be able to feel between the joints. And if you take your time and find somewhere that's a little bit sore. So I've got an area here that's sore, and it's generally a little bit sore for me around there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place my thumb, going to put my other hand on top. So as I said before, the pressure comes from the hand on top. So all I'm doing is adding a little bit of pressure, and it's really quite gentle, but I can feel that. So again, I'm going to take a deep breath. I'm just going to gently press into that until I get, it's probably about a 6 out of 10 right now. Again, I need to relax my leg. I can feel that, but I need to do that. Yes, it takes time. And the more patient you are, the more rewarded you'd be. I think one of the things I've learned, again, over the many years I've been doing this, is that I'm in no hurry. I see other therapists rushing around the body, and me, I stay where I am and just wait for everything to soften. So I'm beginning to feel a change there now, and I hope that you've found somewhere that you can feel that change too. Love the fact that I've got the candle there above my hands. Feels quite nice. Okay, so my tissues have softened in there. So let me show you a few other things, because you can use this reinforced thumb to go deeper between the muscles. Now, muscles have directions of fibres, not just one fibre. So if you look at a muscle diagram, you'll get a general idea of which direction each muscle fiber's run in. So for instance, the quadricep muscles here mainly go lengthways along your thigh here. So we're going along the fibers here. So I'm using that technique. I've got my thumb into my quadricep muscle, and I'm actually just literally leaning into that, okay? And as I'm doing that, I can feel into any sore areas. That would be going along the length of the fibers. We can also go more cross fiber. So I'm having to change position there, show you. So now I'm going across those fibers. Generally across the fibers are a little more tender. Okay. And the same you could do with your fingertips. So here's along the fibers, and here's across the fibers. And you can feel you can go really quite deeply in there. So remember, whenever you go deeper, you go slower. You do not rush, and you wait, and you find something a little bit tender, and you wait a little bit longer. So if some of you have hypermobile joints, let me show you a few things about hypermobility. If you have hypermobile joints, it means that they extend more than most people. So what will happen when you're trying to use your fingers is that they'll bend too much. I can't personally do that. But if you find your fingers are bending this way, you have to really look after them. So use the fingers on top to try and curl them a little bit more downwards, okay? And if that still doesn't work for you, then you have to find another way, because you will be overextending those fingers and potentially hurting yourself. So anyone with any hypermobility, just be that much more careful with what you're doing, okay? So we have done some petrissage, we have gone in, and you might use those fingertips. Let's get my leg around a bit more. Might use those fingertips around the joint itself. Can you see that? So find, now some people don't like the feeling of their kneecap, their patella moving around. Some people really don't like that. I'm okay with that. So you use your fingertips, you use your thumb, you can go all the way around that knee. Any of you do a lot of running, it's really helpful to work in all these areas. A lot of people have tight iliotibial band that comes into the knee and causes problems with the knee. If your pelvis isn't quite aligned, that can cause problems. So there's lots of reasons why you might be getting tenderness. And so, you know, let's see if you can release some of these things with the massage that I'm teaching you. Whenever we work deeply, we generally move back into a sort of medium depth stroke. So, and then maybe into the more effleurage strokes again. So a nice effleurage after that. So it'd be nice for you to, at the end of this, let me know what effect you think this is having in your joint spaces and deeper into your muscle tissue, wherever you're using that. Of course, you can bring your foot up and you can begin to work on your foot. We haven't looked at the foot yet, but really, you can't see mine from there, can you? But what I'm doing now is just taking my thumbs into the sole of my foot, and that feels really good. You can work in between the toes. You can work around your ankle with your fingertips. You can put one hand on top of the other. Let me see if I can get that up there. So I can, yeah, so one hand here, I'm coming around that ankle joint. So really good for you, getting around the joint spaces into that Achilles area. So I'll leave you to do lots more of that yourself. Knuckles are very useful. Let me show you that a little bit more with the, see, you can use your knuckles in all sorts of ways. We also use that scooping technique, so you can use knuckles with that too. So, you know, get used to just literally finding, here's the key, find what area of your hand works best in the area of your body. So, you know, you're going to need something small to get in between the joint spaces. So you're going to need your fingertips here, but working on these larger areas, you might want to work with your knuckles here, okay? So really experiment and see how you get on with that. So I'm just going to do some more effleurage before we finish, and you know you've got plenty of time after this to do your other leg. Let me know how your legs are feeling after all of this. And we might finish with some nice stroking, whatever you decide you like by now. Trigger points are areas of irritability in the muscle tissue. It often happens because you are overusing a muscle in some way, or it could be a postural issue. So if you're spending a lot of time in front of a computer, what you'll find is certain areas in your muscle are really getting overworked, and that means they get hyper irritable and create this kind of denseness in the tissue that we can actually feel. So when you're actually working into the tissues, you can usually feel a little ribbon or a little knot of tissue. And when you press that, it hurts. Okay, so it'll hurt in the localized area. And sometimes what you'll also find is when you're pressing that area, you'll get an area of referred pain. So you get the pain showing up somewhere else on your body, and that is an active trigger point. Why do we need to know about trigger points? Well, they can be really useful for self-treatment. So if you know where they are and you know how to locate them and you know what to do with them, and it is literally that very gentle, sustained pressure into that point until you feel that melting. If you know how to do that, you can self-treat an awful lot of issues. So a lot of back pain, a lot of knee pain, a lot of other pain comes from trigger points. So I think the more you practice, the more sensitive your fingers are going to become. And the better you're going to get at doing this massage. The more you practice on yourself, the better you're going to get for other people. So that's a given.